All right, and whenever you all are ready, you guys, you all can get started over there on that side. And then I'm sorry for everyone here in Cameron. I'll be getting started with you all in just a moment.
Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, awesome. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
We have to admit them first, right?
Are
you gonna do that?
Yes, I can do that.
I mean, I'd love to have a conversation with just you, but
yeah, okay.
Popping in.
Welcome. Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll be okay. Let's give it about 3 more minutes for people to, because people still joining.
Sí. Sí, pero así ya empezó. Bueno.
Welcome, you guys. We're going to give it about 3 more minutes before we can, we're going to get started. Just give people time to enter in the room.
As other people are entering, if you guys want to pop in the chat, like where you're from.
So it's come get your
so it's kind of to see.
girls come get your fries, your ketchup, and your ketchup.
It's always fun to see where everybody's
Right, it is fun.
tuning in from. Ooh, Vegas. Chicago. Okay, that's more towards me. Ooh, Oregon.
Hey, Washington.
People, South Carolina, love it. Michigan. Welcome.
Okay, we have people still joining, so I'm gonna give it about 1 more minute, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Sure. I'm gonna.
Leesville, Louisiana. I got lost in Leesville one time because I went to Northwestern. So fun time in Leesville.
I missed where Rita's from. Rita says she's the only foreigner. Rita, where are you from again? Oh, Argentina.
Yeah, wow.
Nice. I think you get the furthest distance award.
Right, right.
Work in Cairo? I'm assuming that's distance.
Okay. People are still joining in, but in the interest of time,
If you
I'm
want to
gonna
go
go
ahead and
ahead.
start, I'll keep an eye on the waiting room and I'll enter them as you go through your intros.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome you guys to GEG Louisiana, partnered with LA EdChat and MyPD 24/7. This is our distance learning webinar series we started earlier when distance learning first took hold in Louisiana in March, and we're continuing on with that because we are continuing with distance learning, and especially with summer school and enrichment. So thanks for joining. My name is Tyler Colson. I am a Google certified trainer. I am also a GEG Louisiana captain, as well as a STEM teaching fellow. So I specialize in STEM and STEAM. And you can always find me on Twitter at Tyler Loves Teach or at www.schooledutech.com, where you can email me directly and see access to any presentations that I have done personally. I'm all about collaboration. So I'm very excited to be in GEG and a GEG captain. Okay, our GEG Louisiana website, I'm going to go through it towards the end, but it is geglouisiana.com. We have a group on Facebook. We are on Twitter, as well as Google Groups and Instagram. Okay, so our presenter, Miss Sarah, she's going to be doing 6 steps to organize your Google Drive, which I personally need because I'm not a list viewer, I'm a grid viewer. And so this is really interesting in how to organize yourself. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give it over to her.
All right, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. Probably for most of us, some of us, it still might be morning. My name's Sarah Kiefer, and I am a technology integration specialist in the Ross Local Schools, which is just a bit northwest of Cincinnati, Ohio. I've lived in Ohio my whole life. I met Wiley when he and I were at the Google Innovator Academy together. We were on the same team. Shout out to Team Power Up. And that's how he and I connected. And I love everything Google, and I love helping teachers better understand like how they can use technology, whether it's specifically Google or not, in their classrooms. And a 14-year classroom teacher veteran before I moved into this role. I was teaching 7th and 8th grade social studies at the time. Shout out to all my social studies teacher friends, because love that content, love everything about it. And when I accepted this position, it was a brand new position in our district. We had just gone one-to-one like the year before, and we really felt the need that that we had somebody. And I was told after I had accepted it that I would be shifted down to the elementaries. So that was kind of a game changer for me. I ended up, now I'm full-time. The first year I did half and half. I was half-time 7th and 8th grade social studies, half-time supporting technology pre-K to 4. So I really found a need to be as organized as possible because of that. And I love sharing this stuff. I write a blog. It's called Tech You Can Do. Website's www.techyoucando.com. And I've got all my contact information in the slide deck, which will be shared to you. I do want to give you the opportunity right now, as we're still kind of starting up, grab a sheet of paper. Just grab a sheet of paper, grab something to write with. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's nothing that you're probably going to hold on to. It's not going to be like a memento. It's just like a scratch piece of paper that you can jot some thoughts down on real quick when we get to it. And Tyler's gonna help me out here. She's gonna be watching the chat. I get to talking and I get so into it. And so Tyler's gonna help me out and popping in questions and stopping me and going, oh, can you clarify something or not? You know, so if you have questions, please do use the chat feature. Because I'm always happy to, you know, stop what I'm doing to make something make more sense or re-explain. Because that's the thing that we've got to do as teachers. You know, we love teaching each other, and you know how I explain it one way might not be the best way for you. So pop your questions in. Tyler, help me out, and we'll get through this. I think we also agree that we're going to be pretty sensitive to the time. Hopefully just take about an hour. If you have extra questions at the end, I'm happy to answer them too. So don't feel like rushed, but I do want to be sensitive to everyone's, you know, rest of their lives. Some of you might still be in school. I finished last Friday, so, you know, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful day here. And so I'll be respectful of that for you guys as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but please feel free. This is something that I learned very quickly in doing these video conferences. If it takes your computer full screen when I start sharing, feel free to hit the escape button, which will kind of like pop you out of full screen so that maybe you can have like your other windows. Since we're going to be talking a lot about Google Drive, it might be really helpful if you don't have a second computer, which some people do, but other people don't. It might be helpful if you escape out of the full screen and have your Google Drive open. I don't need to be this big giant person on your screen. You can squeeze me down and follow along that way. And like I said, you'll get the slide deck at the end too. So if you haven't ever tried that, try it. Might be worth it. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And I've got this slide deck. It's called 6 Steps to Organizing Your Google Drive. I have had numerous teachers tell me lots of different things, like it's too much, it's not even worth it, I shouldn't even bother, there's too much there, oh, it's just a mess. I hear it all the time, and I say to them, I said, but we can do this, I can help you out. But the key thing to remember is there's a big difference between helping students organize versus helping adults organize. And when I go in, I do handle organizing with students differently than I would with an adult. Students typically need a little bit more direction. Adults need more of the conversation, more of the thinking behind it. And that's where I ask for you to have your piece of paper. We're going to do some thinking, but I also wanted to give you a space to like jot some stuff down. I also thought it might be helpful if we get started by actually looking and seeing what is Google Drive, what is everything in here. So I just took a screenshot of inside of one of my Google accounts, and I kind of broke it down into different chunks. You can see all of the different green rectangle areas. When I look at my drive, I typically see 3 different sections. This one over here to the left, you got your main one in the center, and then you have this over here to your right. Now, not everybody will have this particular rectangle, but everybody will have these items over here. This, where it says my newest folder and there's an X, that piece is optional. You don't actually have to have that showing up. And it kind of just goes back to, how does your brain work? What do you like to see? What do you need to see? As a classroom teacher, I always loved this over here because I could see very quickly, especially when students had shared their work with me, I could see very quickly who had or maybe had not done items just at a glance, because you can see that this was on January 8th, 2018. So it's been a while since I've touched that actual document. So that's something that I always kind of like to keep open. If you choose not to keep it open though, you can click on that little I with the circle or even that X. So I'm gonna pop over so it's a little bit more live action. I've actually got this particular piece of my drive open right here. So you can see over here, if you don't like this, hide those details, and then you get to the main part of your screen. I'm actually inside of a folder that sits in my drive, and I'm a big fan of calling things by food names, and I feel like a lot of people resonate with that. And the best thing I've come up with, this is like your breadcrumb trail. So, you know, if you're 6 folders deep, you've got your little breadcrumb trail up here, because a lot of times maybe you don't remember where you actually house that. I worked with a teacher during this distance learning, and she was like, Sarah, I honestly don't even know where this file is. So she shared her screen, and we found like she'd tucked it inside of a folder, inside of a folder, inside of a folder. And I had to say to her, you know, like, does that really make sense in your brain? And that's how you start to really learn and go through things and find the best method for yourself. One of the biggest surprises, especially when you're dealing with students, I'm going to go back to my actual drive. I'm a list view person. Shout out Team List View. I love the list view. There's never anything wrong with the grid view at all. And I find that students particularly like the grid view better. But what I also find out is that not everybody understands that there's actually 2 different views of Drive. So you hear these team list view, grid view, and you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. This little icon over here, if you hover over it, it shows you it's grid view. So I'm going to switch, and it literally changes nothing except for what your drive actually looks like. Like, it's not reorganizing anything. It's not popping things in or out of any kind of particular order. It's more of a what works better for you visually. I personally like the list view because I like to see the whole name. I like to see some more of the details. The biggest joy of the grid view is you actually get these little previews, you know, these little thumbnails, which resonates with a lot of people too, because you can see at a quick glance what any of these items or files are. The big thing to note is your folders will always, your folders will be up top. Individual files that haven't been housed somewhere, some people like to refer to them as homeless files. I find a lot of value in keeping some things down here. They don't necessarily need to be in one of the folders, so I really like to have them down there at the bottom as well. And if you want to go back, I show the kids, once you know how to turn it on, you can go back and forth. Popping back into my newest folder, you see that it shows you the little icon and the title. Also tell you who the owner is and when the last time was that they modified it. Another item that I actually have turned off is the quick access. Some of you might be looking at your drive and you see an additional chunk of space being taken up in this area up here by quick access. And again, personal preference, there's nothing right or nothing wrong with it. It's just my preference to not have it on. So in the gear wheel, if you go to settings, and there's not a whole lot up here in this particular part of the settings, there's really not a whole lot. But if I put a little check mark here, notice it says when you need them in quick access here. I'm gonna put a little check mark, and then I'm gonna say done. And then we're gonna give it a second, and I'm gonna go back to my drive, and you'll notice you now see these little tiles up here at the very top. This is Google's artificial intelligence at work. What they're trying to do is provide you like a one-click, instead of having to go into any of your folders. They're providing these with you, these for you right up top. To me, they take up a little bit too much real estate, and as I explain it to teachers, I'm in and out of documents and files and folders like all the time, just because of my job being an integration specialist, you know, supporting the district, supporting my building, supporting individual teachers, students, and all that. I'm constantly going in and out. So very rarely did I ever find that these quick access tiles worked well for me. They might work really well for you. A lot of students really like them. Teachers have found this to be very helpful because maybe they're constantly going into their grade book. that they have set up in Google Sheets. Or maybe they use the same slide deck for their morning starters and bell ringers. So maybe this is very helpful for them. This is one of those that I can't tell you what works for you. This is one where you have to stop and go and maybe live with it. Maybe live with it.
We have a question in the chat. Could you repeat what you just said? The beginning.
How to turn quick access on and off?
Yes.
Yep. And I always like, I turn it on or off, and I show the kids, kind of talk through it, reassure them that if you like it, great. If you don't like it, the same way you turn it on is the same way you turn it off. This little gear wheel up here to the top right, you go into settings. And like I said, this is a very, very tiny chunk of settings for Drive. Oops, I did not want to click that one. Turn that one off. I want to uncheck down here where it says suggestions. This is Google's artificial intelligence. That's the quick access. Notice why they don't just call it quick access out here. I don't know. It would kind of make sense, but uncheck that if you don't want to see it.
And while I still have you in settings with the convert uploads, you keep that on at all times, or do you turn it off sometimes?
I turned it on a good number of years ago because I was converting all of my, we were told we were no longer going to have Office on our computers and that we had to make the conversion to Google. And I was spending a lot of time copying and pasting. And the girl that was the tech integration at the time for my building, she said, well, just put that check mark on. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so she showed me, and I was like, game changer, never turning that off. I would say 99.9% of my life happens in the Google realm. Our district is a G Suite for education. At home, if I'm creating something, I typically will do that in Google. So again, me personally, I leave it on all the time because a lot of times what I'll do is if somebody shares a Word doc, an Excel spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint, I'll leave it on, I'll let it convert over to Google, do what I need to do to it, and then I'll download it as the Microsoft component and share it back or do with it what I need to do. So me personally, I leave it on. I leave this off and then I say done and it's gone. So it's really nice and it is that easy. And again, this is where I like to turn on my activity notice. And you could go into details. If you click on a specific folder, it will give you a lot of the specifics. These items over here are some add-ons. You can have quick access to your calendar in Drive. If you use Google Keep, you can have quick access. And if you use the Google Tasks, you can have quick access while you are inside of your Drive as well. There's a few other, I explored this the other day. There's a few other add-ons. I personally don't use any of these, so I just kind of stay out of there. So the main part of your Drive is here. Over to the left, you can get into your shared with me, the recent, the starred, trash. You notice I'm in one of my personal accounts, so you can see I'm coming up close to the storage limit. If you're in your G Suite for education, you have no limits, which is a wonderful, wonderful piece. So jumping back here, is there anyone, any questions, Tyler, anything that I need to cover?
None so far, but I totally agree with you with the converting and then convert. My district is a G Suite district as well, but for some reason, admin still uses Word Online, and I hate Word Online, so I always convert and then convert back. It's easier for me too.
Yep. And if you're wondering like what we're talking about is if you turn that on, like let's say this was given to me as a PowerPoint, because I had that one convert check marked, it automatically changes it over into slides. And then let's say I do what I need to do, change it, whatever. When you come up to file and you go to download, you have the option of downloading it again as a PowerPoint. So then when you send it back, you can send it back as a PowerPoint. Oftentimes when our admins share out something and it's in Office, it's more of just a one-way communication. So for me, I'm lucky that that's really kind of all that I've encountered. But just so that everyone is aware, like you can in this, it'll work the same in a doc or in Sheets to go to their Office counterpart too.
We have a new question in the as far as activities. Can you see, I'm assuming like if you have a team drive, can you see the activity in the entire drive or only if you click on a specific folder?
It does not appear that you get the activity in shared drives. I'm not seeing it out here and I'm not seeing it as an option. So I will say, I think shared drives has some really different thinking around it. And so it's not going to operate exactly like Google Drive, like the My Drive. So yeah, it doesn't look like there's the activity column even accessible.
Oh, okay. We have two questions. The first one, you mentioned that you get it for Google Classroom. Will it automatically just give you notifications for your class?
There's no notifications. The only time I think you can actually get notifications with anything having to do with your drive is whether you get the email notification because someone has shared something with you. I do believe at one point I turned it off because it was kind of not super helpful for me. On my phone, I have the Drive app, and I believe notifications was a setting on there at one point. But I know that there's been some updates. I'm not 100% sure that notifications still show up on that app. But for Google Classroom, all of those notifications are handled inside of Google Classroom as opposed to handling anything inside of Drive. Drive is basically just your storage compartment for any of those things when it relates to Google Classroom.
And then the next question is about formatting when we are converting from G Suite to Microsoft products. Have you had issues to where formatting doesn't look the same? And then what do you do when the formatting is off?
If you talked to me about 5 years ago, I would have told you, yeah, formatting was a potentially big issue. These days, it's really good. The two areas that I've noticed the biggest struggle is they don't have the exact same fonts. So if you're really attached to a font, like back in the day, I was really attached to Century Gothic. And when I first made the jump to Google, they didn't have Century Gothic. They do now, but they didn't have that. So everything that converted over, it kind of found like a similar font, but it wasn't the font that I wanted. So that was one, and it still is a potential hurdle. The other one was if you are in a very, very heavily formatted, and it's typically more so with the Google Docs than anything else that I've seen, and you have a lot of tables and charts in that, in boxes and boxes. That is another place that I've noticed has been a bit of a struggle when converting one way or the other. The other option you always have if you're going from G Suite and you have to share it out, it limits your editing ability once it's shared out, but you could always download them as PDFs. So it kind of, I always think about it like it kind of freezes it right where it's at. And then you don't have to worry so much about the formatting piece to it. But that is something to keep in mind. It's not like a one-to-one correlation, although it's 10 times better than it ever used to be. So I'm happy about that.
That's all the questions for now.
Okay. So the slide after that, it just kind of gives you a real brief overview of what everything is. And now we're ready for our activity. So remember I asked you, I might as well just dismiss that. I asked you to have a little piece of paper handy. We're going to do a little bit of a thinking activity. I've worked with several teachers, and they just kind of throw up their hands and they'll say, Sarah, just tell me how you want me to organize my drive. I'll do it your way. You know, you're smart. You've been using G Suite. I mean, just tell me. I'll just do it. And I always go, but like, we're not the same person, right? You know, like, I think differently about things. I have different responsibilities than you do. And I never want to assume that my way is the best way. It works great for me. It really does. I mean, I love it, obviously, because I use it. But just because it works for me doesn't necessarily mean it works for you. So on your little piece of paper, I just want you to think about the big buckets that are in your life. And this can, if you're thinking about your school Google Drive, or you're thinking about your personal Google Drive, or you're kind of mixing the two, it doesn't matter. But think about, what are your big buckets? So I always reflect back on me. I work with 2 different schools. So I have an ELDA folder and a Morgan folder, because I have to keep things separate, because this is for these teachers and this is for those teachers. I also have like a folder like for the district. So things that don't necessarily fit in neatly to either of those buildings, I have like the catch-all bucket. I also have things for a big folder that like has the name of it is programs. And inside of there, it's for like any of the digital programs that we use and support. So if I have to hold on to documentation, or I'm sure none of you have ever experienced any hiccups with your digital programs and have had to contact their support, and maybe you have to provide screenshots or files to them. That's a big part of my job, is to help figure out like what is the problem. And a lot of times that means I'm going to the company and sharing screenshots and showing them videos or whatever it is to help fix whatever problem was the teacher or the student had. So think about these big buckets, and don't think about it too hard, and don't try to come up with 25. Think about your big, broad topics. And probably the best connection I can make was when I was helping my friend Julie organize her drive, making that conversion from Office to Google. She was a language arts teacher in 7th grade. And I said, well, Julie, like, how do you organize your classroom? Like, what is it that you do? She goes, well, I have writing and reading and grammar. Like, those are the 3. And I said, well, then make those 3 of your buckets. And she was like, oh, I could do that. So, we wrote that down. We did that. And we started there, right? Over here gives you some ideas of things to think about. When I was a social studies teacher, I had a 7th grade folder and an 8th grade folder, because I taught 2 different grades. And then inside of there, I even thought, oh, well, boom, like when I think about this, it becomes very clear to me that I need to have a folder for each of my units. So once you start thinking about these big buckets, you can kind of go, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. So jot down your buckets. And as I point out down here at the bottom, there's no right or wrong. There really isn't. Think about if you're, I've been in education now since 2001. So, almost 20 years. And one of my things that I held on to from classroom to classroom when I moved was those big 4-drawer filing cabinets. Like they were my thing. Like I loved them, but I never really truly kept them organized, because I just keep cramming more and more in there, but I'd need another, file folder. And so that's how you can also think about your Google Drive. It's your giant 4-drawer filing cabinet, except it's digital and there's no capacity. Like you can keep piling and piling and piling in there. It's all there. Any questions on the buckets?
Done so far.
Okay. So these buckets then are going to become your folders. And what I like to do too is somebody who is very overwhelmed with their drive and they're like, I don't even know where to start. I always say, let's start fresh. So let's go back to my drive and we're going to pretend like that this is my drive. Okay, I'm going to close this out, keep it clean. So let's say in my drive, I have one file. but I've got these different buckets that I've got written down on my paper. So now I want to create a new folder. This little shark tooth up here, you can click on that, or this giant, beautiful new button, and you want to create a folder, and then just create a folder for each of your buckets. So I would do ELDA, and then I'm going to create it because that's one of my buildings. And then this time I'm going to use the little shark tooth, and there's that new folder. And then this, I'm going to create Morgan, because that's the other building that I have. And then I'm going to create a third folder, and I'm going to call it District. So now I took my buckets that I was thinking about, and I've made them into folders. And now, like, even if you have 12 other folders in here, now you can start the process of doing a bit of reorganization. And all I suggest that you do to start with, you create your folders, think about some simple names for your folders. You know, some of us kind of overthink all of our naming conventions, but if we keep them clean and simple, it's going to go a lot further, and you're going to make those connections. Like, let's think about my friend Julie. Like, let's say they read a class novel. It makes sense to put that in her reading folder. You know, if they're doing a unit on persuasive writing, it makes sense to put that in her writing folder. You know, we've got a lot of other complications in our lives, some of us with far more than others. But Drive is one where let's keep it as simple and clean as we possibly can. And I think it'll go a lot further for any of us, you know, when we're trying to stay organized. So keeping those folder names simple, and you can have as many folders as you want. And now it's time for action. And you say, Sarah, what do we do now? We've got these folders. You know, maybe you have 29 different folders, or you have 3. Start at the top of your list of any of the files that you have and decide, where does that go? And again, this is doesn't need to be this big, long, drawn out process. Don't overthink this stuff. Practice document. Okay, that doesn't go with ELDA. It doesn't go with, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on it. I'm going to drag it. And when I highlight over district, notice how it's blue all the way across. I'm just going to let go. Now I'm going to undo that so you can see it again. You click on it and you drag it and drop it. Okay. Also, if you have a mouse, you could right click on it. If you're on a laptop and you have a trackpad, or a Chromebook and you have a trackpad, you could do a 2-finger tap on it. And you get this menu up here, and you would use the Move To option. And right now you can see it kind of reflects the page that it's on. And if you wanted to choose district, you could click on that, and then you would say move. And it goes in there, and it's done. And you've just taken care of that folder. So let's go ahead and close that out. I guess I've already moved it. Done. Repeat that process with any of the files that you have hanging out, and do the files first. Don't worry about all of your other folders. So if I were here and I wanted to move this, just decide real quick, where is this Flipgrid Twitter chat going to go? I'm going to put that in my school folder. 5 tools to help students become discerning media consumers. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to put that also in my school folder. I'm just going to do this real quickly. You say, well, Sarah, what happens when you come across something and you go, I have no idea what that is? I mean, what is 21166CF? I don't know. You might be tempted to trash that. Well, it might be something that you want to hold on to. And I've got a real quick tip. It's also on our slide over here in this gray box. If you click on your file, and this only works for files, it does not work for folders. Notice how it's blue. If I tap the letter P on my keyboard, it shows up as the preview. So again, you click on your file, you have no idea what it is, or you can't remember what that is, and you tap the letter P, it gives you a preview. And you can do that with all of your files as you go down. Like, say you don't remember what any of these things are. If you tap the letter P, it allows you to preview whatever that file is. You're not going to be able to edit, but I have found like that is, I think I learned that last summer or the summer before that, and I did a little dance for joy. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use this all the time. It's fantastic. So go through, clean all of these up, put them where they need to be, and then we are ready to tackle, what do we all have in our folders or in our drive? Untitled. Some of us are better than others. Some of us are guilty of having a ton of these untitled because we're pulled in so many different directions. We create something, we're pulled away from it. You know, we have them, we all do. But we've got to deal with these, otherwise our drive is going to stay cluttered. And a lot of times, to me, when we come across these untitled, whether it's for a teacher or it's in a student's drive, it's something that they actually do need, or it's something that they were looking for but couldn't find because it was untitled. So again, use that preview, and I think I always have. I've got some untitled down here. Be like, I don't know what this Untitled Jam is. And Jamboard is a new application in Google. But you say, I don't know what that is. I don't remember even creating this on October 4th, 2019. So I'm going to preview it. It's going to give me, oh, no preview. And I would say, oh, I don't even actually need that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to immediately take this jam and I'm going to throw it in the garbage. Gone. I'm going to take care of it right away. Alternatively, if you find another untitled and you do your little preview and you go, oh, well, I must have just been experimenting. And let's say you have a string of like 10 of them. This works really well for students because the going in and the out, kind of trips kids up. Keeping in mind, I work with elementary students. I do this towards the end of the year with fourth graders. We go in and we clean up their drives because they're getting ready to head over to our middle school. So part of my job is to help them kind of clean things up a little bit before they head on over. What you can also do is you can come up here and notice that my cursor changes to a little hand. If you click on that, let's say this is something that you need, you can delete that and you might call it my first jam. You're still in preview mode, right? Because you're there, you need to keep this. I want to hold on to this. And then notice these arrows, the toggles to the right and the left. You're just going to your next file. And you go, oh, well, look at that. I must have been feeling artsy one day and I did a drawing of a tree. I think I was actually practicing with Jamboard. So again, give it a title. And one thing that you can do if you're in this mode, you could, if I don't want to keep this, I teach the kids to title it delete. And then if you think about Google Drive, it'll keep everything alphabetical. So if you go through, let's say you have like 30 files you've got to get through. If you title the ones delete, when you go back, you've just put all of the 6 files that you need to delete together and you can grab all 6 of them and drop them in your trash can. And then you just keep moving through. Here's a Google map that I made. Has no name. I might say I have no idea why I wanted to even make this. Change that also to delete. I like to capitalize it as well because it's just a little bit more eye-catching. And then when I go back, notice up here, I've got delete and delete. My map obviously did not hold that title just yet. I'm sure when I refresh it, it'll be there. And then you can grab multiple. Let's say I want to grab multiple. There it is. It popped in. I want to grab multiple files. I can grab all 3 of these, click, hold, and drag over, toss them in your garbage can, and they're gone. So that's how I deal with these pesky untitled. which moving right along, now we're on step 5, which covers exactly what I just showed you. The whole renaming of the file by clicking on it once you're in preview mode, reorganizing, which I did not show you, and I will real quick. Let's say I preview this file and I say, oh yeah, I know exactly where I want to put that. Can I go ahead and do it from my preview? Here's the world's skinniest snowman. You click on it. There's move to, and you can move it into whatever folder you would like to. And it's there. But notice you're not leaving the preview window, so you can just jump to your next file, which is helpful. And to get out of it, you just kind of click on this grayish area.
Okay, we have 2 questions. The first is, can you create the same folders in your shared drive?
The exact same folders?
I'm assuming so.
You can create folders that mimic the same names, but it's not going to live in both places. Shared drive takes away, it strips away any kind of ownership of an individual person. Shared drive is owned, the files and the folders that are inside there are owned by that drive. So like in an organization, in a school, let's say you have shared drive for your math curriculum, your language arts curriculum, your history curriculum, your science curriculum, so on and so forth. No one technically owns any of that. And that's the beauty of it, right? But then it's not also living in my drive because someone owns the files in my drive, whether it's me, whether it's a different one of my accounts, somebody else, that has shared it with me. So that's a big thing that we've got to wrap our heads around when we start talking about shared drives. They don't operate under the same ownership rules. And there's a reason for that, which we can talk about more if people are interested.
And there's another question. I use Google Classroom every day. In my drive, there's copies of template assignments. Should I do all except one?
You kind of broke up there. Can you repeat that?
I use Google Classroom every day. In my drive, there are several copies of template assignments. So I'm assuming she does like a copy of, or a copy of this, and continue to make copies. Should I delete them all except one?
If you're doing the exact same thing, you could just continually reshare out that particular slide deck or Google Doc or whatever it is. You don't actually have to make a new copy each time, because I love that feature in Google Classroom. And what I tell my teachers is, like, when you go to do that, make a copy for each student, you're actually standing at the copying machine and you're feeding it through. But you're then taking your master copy back with you, which is what's housed in your drive. However, if you're looking at it and you want to keep like a history, because maybe it's a math activity and you change the number every day and you want to have all of those individual files, my recommendation is make a folder and call it My Templates, and then keep all of your templates in there. And then that way, next year or next quarter, or however often you need to have access to those, they're all right there in that one particular folder.
And this is a question I have personally. My students, I don't know why in a class, they share things with me directly instead of turning into Google Classroom. They'll just like, oh, I'll share this with Ms. Colson. And then now my shared with me is, I have 170 students. So how do I organize that share with me folder?
I am going to be very honest with you. I consider, and this again, this is my personal belief. I think this thinking, once you come to grips with it, it's something that we have to accept. Yeah. Don't ever go to your shared with me unless you have to.
Okay.
Like, just don't go. I was telling one of my principals one time, I said, it's like a dark, deep, never-ending hole. And I said, you'll crawl in there and you're going to have a real hard time coming back out of there or finding any of the stuff that's in there. And I'll show you what I suggest as an alternative. Number one, for the Google Classroom piece, depending again on your age of students, the situation that you're in, I personally think it would be far better to teach them, and this is going to sound a little harsh, and I'm not meaning this in a harsh way, but teach them like they have to hit that turn in button. They have to hit that submit button. And the way, like, and again, like, this is going to sound harsh, and I'm totally not meaning for this to be harsh for these kids, because I understand everybody needs a little bit of grace now and then. I do get that. But if they say to you, you know, but Mrs. Kiefer, I turned that in, and you're like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And they're like, yeah, I shared it with you. And I said, no, see, you shared it with me, you didn't turn it in. Let's pull up Google Drive or Google Classroom and let's walk through this together. You know, you didn't understand, and that's okay. You're like, I get it. You know, like, we all make mistakes, you know, we're human. You play it off in that respect, but then take that 2 seconds it is to show them and have them do it. This is probably the best teaching tip that I can give you from a tech coach's point of view. I often have teachers that just kind of like swing their computers over to me and they say, here, you drive. And I'll be like, no, this is your drive. You got to drive it. Nope, this is your document. You got to do it. And I say, because then they're forced to do it, you know, and anytime, you know, if I do it, great. If you're doing it, better, because you're probably going to understand it if you're the one that's actually doing it. Some people like to watch, and that's great. But I'm sitting right there, chances are, I'm talking them through it. I walk through it with them. So for your students, Tyler, I would say definitely teach them that submit thing and tell them, like, look, I'm not checking for it there. I need to see it in classroom. And whether you use the grading piece to it or not, that's a different ballgame, but I think they'll catch on pretty quick. But sometimes for these kids, it's a matter of, well, I don't know what that's, because you have to say to them, like, it's like walking up to my desk and putting it in the folder or the bin. You got to click that little button, right? You see it right there? Yeah, go ahead and click on that.
Right.
And then it actually, for them too, helps because it, you know, grays it out. And then they're not, you know, forgetting that they've done it or not. But don't go to your deep, dark, never-ending hole of shared with me. I stay out of there, to be honest, I do. And then conquering, basically the last tip right here is probably the best one. And I saved this for last, and maybe not the best one, but your previously created folders. You could choose at this point, because you've done it with all of your loose files, you know, your ones that haven't gone somewhere before, you could open up each folder. And let's go into here. I don't even know what's in this folder, probably not a whole lot. So you've got files in here. You might go, you know what, I don't even use this anymore. I don't even need these. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete them. And then by default, like, you're still doing that organization. Or here's a pretty cool little tip. I call this your tree. Over here, this little shark tooth. If you click that, it's going to expand into a little tree. And here are all of your folders. Notice you don't see the individual files, even though I still have probably 15, 20. You won't see the folders, or you won't see the files. You'll only see your folders. And now, let's say you do need to keep this. This was like a template. Let's say you do need to keep this one. You can take it, click on it, drag it, and drop it. And anytime you see the little shark teeth right here, you can expand. You can see I got folders of pictures, and here's classroom. These are all Google classes. I love this little tree. I love it. Especially if I'm doing some massive organization. I can click and drag from one side of the screen to the other. Or you can say at this point, like, I'm good with these other folders. Like, I was on the right track before. So that can help out a lot too. And now we're coming up on, I've got about 5 minutes before 2 o'clock for me, my time, but I do have some bonus material. And this is the part where everybody's like, oh, I can't cram in anything else. Like I'm done. But I promise you, this is the fun stuff. And I saved this for last because it's completely fun and enjoyable. And we already kind of talked about Google Classroom. It does create folders for you automatically. Here is probably my all-time favorite tip for Google Drive. And the kids have no idea that it's coming. Some of them have probably asked me at this point. And teachers always guaranteed teachers have asked at this point, like, how did you make those colored? How did you do that? How did you put those little, what are those? Are those emojis? How did you put that on there? And I'll be like, okay, stick with me, just hold tight, we'll get there. But I save that for last. You know, you got to get through like the meat of your stuff. You got to learn the hard things first. Now here comes the fun stuff, right? So every folder when you initially create it is, you got this, I'm going to jump into here. It's just gray. It's kind of neutral. It's there. And that's fine. Not a big problem. But do a 2-finger tap, do a right click on it, click on it one time, whatever you want, you got to highlight it or something. And then over here, if you're right clicking or doing the 2-finger tap, this menu is going to show up. And I'll challenge you. If I told you that you could change the color of your folders, you find it. And that's a little trick that I've learned too. Like if you make people search for it a little bit, they're probably going to remember it a lot longer than if I were to say, oh, look for blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, the kids will be like, students will be like, I can't find it. It's not in there, Mrs. Kiefer, it's not there. It's not. And I'll be like, let's go to art class. Think about art class in your brain. You guys all know what an artist's palette is? Oh yeah. I'm like, find it. And then you look for the icon, change color, and there you go. It's not a lot. What, 4 times 6, 24 different colors. Pick one. So district to me, we're maroon and gold. Now I don't really have a maroon, but that's kind of close. And if the kids hover over it, they love this. They get a kick out of the names. That one's Old Brick Red, Cardinal, Asparagus, Spearmint, Bubblegum. I mean, they just get a kick out of it. And this is why I save it for last, because you can really kind of start to lose people. So I'm going to change that to Old Brick Red. And then you just keep going. 2-finger tap, right click, or if you click on it one time, it's blue. The world's skinniest snowman also gives you that change color option. Go through and pick colors. I'm a big believer in colors, and they have meaning. And to me, like Classroom, it just makes sense that it's green because the icon is green. Red is my favorite color, so anytime I have an option, I'm going to pick red. But then here's the other fun. It's just a lot more fun. See how I have like these little icons? If you have a Mac, I know how to do it because I have a Mac. You can go in and use the emoji keyboard up here in Edit. But the other thing is these 2 websites right here, emojicopy.com or Get Emoji. Me personally, I just search for, I do them a lot, so it kind of comes up pretty quick for me. And then it's as simple as clicking over. I'm going to, you could even do like the right click on it, copy, come back to Drive. And then here's a really cool tip. If you want to rename this, because I want to add in that emoji, you tap, make it blue, and then you tap the letter N and paste it in there. You've got the little smiley face with the shades on it, and it kind of livens it up. Notice it also carries over here to your tree. It carries over onto your phone. It would carry over if you shared that folder out. Colors do not share, so the colors are specific to me. And if you think about this, these icons can really go a long way in helping students stay organized, especially students that maybe have not fully mastered reading, or students that need a little bit of extra boost. Quite honestly, I love having these colors and emojis they start to mean something to me. It's very quick, but as a math teacher, you could say, you know, open your math folder and see the math symbols. They're right there. You know, if you're talking about a photo album or a folder with photos, the one with the camera, you start to make those associations, and it really does help, number one, ownership over your drive, but then quick access as well. I've got 2 more bonuses in here.
And we have a quick comment from a couple people in the chat room are saying that Chrome has an extension for emojis that makes it easy instead of going to a keyboard. So
Oh,
awesome. I did not know that. Thank
I
you.
did not either. Did they share the name of it? Because I'm probably going to want to.
Joy Pixels, accessible Joy Pixels. They didn't have the name, but we have, I'll just go to the Chrome web store. There's also an emojipedia.org.
Oh, yeah.
Joy Pixels is the name.
Joy Pixels?
Yes.
Thank you to whoever shared that, because I'll be adding that on. I love it. Anytime you can add emojis and color, like, that's when I get like, oh, this is fun now. And the last thing that I'm going to leave you with as far as like a bonus is, instead of going to the shared with me, do yourself a favor and learn how to do an advanced search. I wrote a blog post about it. It's just a real short, it's a very quick one. I think I even tucked in a video, but it's often overlooked. And Tyler, you had mentioned, you know, students and sharing of things. If you come up here, this search, somebody said it recently in a chat that I was in, and they said, you know, Google initially was like a search engine, right? That's what we know it as, and it's evolved over time. They're really good at searching. So before you even type anything in, click on your little shark tooth. And this is probably key, instead of jumping into shared with me, which you could scroll and scroll and scroll. And depending on how long you've had that Google account, who knows how many files you got in there. Narrow it down by your file. Most of the time, you probably know exactly what the file was that you're looking for. Maybe you don't know who it was that shared it. Maybe you don't know the exact title of it because you didn't create it. But if you think about how big your drive is and you just want to narrow it down to audio or forms or presentations, you just took your whole drive and you just went, whoop, now I'm going to be looking at this. If you know the owner, maybe you owned it, or flip of that, maybe you don't. You know you did not own it, somebody else did. Or if you know a specific person, and even better, in a domain, you can really narrow in by person who that might be. And then if you know when it's been modified, and type in a name or two. So I'm just going to type in that this presentation that I'm looking for, and I'm going to say owned by me. So again, take that drive. It's a presentation, which means it's a slide. It's owned by me, and it has the name. It has the word drive in it. It's going to return that narrow list. And I've been quite pleased with doing this, that it has worked really well in narrowing down exactly what it is that I'm looking for. So like notice, it shows me what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 items out of the, what do I have, like 13 gigabytes used. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a pretty narrow list. And I just typed in one word, but I had those 2 other filters up there. So that's what I would suggest as an alternative to going into that deep, dark hole of shared with me. And then finally, the very last tip moving forward, do yourself a favor. You could drive yourself crazy. Where did I put that? Oh, I have it in here somewhere. Just take 10 or 15 minutes, and that's it. Set a timer, and that's what I tell teachers. Like, you can do something for 10 minutes. I mean, we teach classes. We work with kids all day. We've just gone through this distance learning. We can do this. Set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and then walk away. Or if you're kind of getting into it and you're enjoying it, stick around. But if you do this 10 or 15 minutes, it'll be great. You'll be able to do it. The final, Tyler, are you going to share out or have you maybe shared out the slide deck yet?
Well, I can definitely share how about you share this and I'll go back to the original slide deck. I'll share my screen.
So you want me to share this, what I've got up here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just one final note, if you want to connect with me, I am on Twitter. Kiefer SJ is my handle. I write 2 blogs regularly, and then I also have this Templates for Teacher that I co-created with Beth Kingsley. She and I created an entire site where we've shared out, at this point I think we're up to like 45 templates. I've got another 40. We're in the middle of a conversion. It's all Google based, and you can take any of the templates that you want and make your own copy, modify them, share them out with your students as is. We've got a couple of like example gradebook type things on there, and it's all free. It's out there. Use it with, you know, however you would like, and there is some searching abilities within there if you're looking for something specific. So thank you guys all for your time. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I hope this helps you better organize your drive. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then I'll pop into the chat with the link with my presentation while you, I guess, wrap it up, Tyler.
Yes. So thank you all for coming out. That was great, Sarah. Thank you so much. So our next presentation will be Nicole Taylor on June 9th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, the framework for online learning success. And then we also have our fast hacks using Google for productivity on June 16th, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time with Ms. Desiree Alex. You all can register at @GEG/LA website. I'm going to go through the website in a minute because I did see a question in the chat about sharing the presentation. This was recorded. So this is the website, geglouisiana.com. I'm going to walk through it with you guys real quick, but do know we have a Facebook group. If you just search GEG Louisiana on Facebook and it should pop up. I'm not sure how easily it'll pop up on Instagram, but I know for sure if you just Google, well, not Google, but search GEG Louisiana on those 3 websites, that'll pop up. Real quick, I'm going to walk through the GEG Louisiana website. Let me go back to the home page. This is what it looks like, and you can submit a presentation in order to but I'm going to go to webinars, and in webinars, we have the upcoming as well as the previous. So here are videos of past webinars that we've already had throughout our GEG Louisiana launch, since our GEG Louisiana launch. So I would usually, Wiley with uploading the recording, so he should soon. So just keep checking back in. And any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Tyler, for helping out in the chat. I really appreciate that.
No problem. It was a pleasure, and I learned a lot as well.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions or they, want to connect about something, feel free to stick around for a minute.
Yeah.
I'll hang out.